Happy New Year, Ash from Droning On Live. And unfortunately, I haven't got a clue where my microphone went. I've lost it. So at the moment, I'm using microphone built into the phone. Sorry for that. But anyway, in this video, I thought I'd talk about something that occurred to me today. Will we change the way that we buy drones over the coming 12 to 24 months potentially? And the reason that this came to me is, let's say you're doing some DIY or you are a construction company and you need some specialist tooling. Quite often you don't buy it anymore. There's no point you spending $10,000 or even $1,000 or even $250 on a bit of specialist kit that you're going to use once, or you're going to use once a month perhaps, because otherwise it's just sat around. In the meantime, the kit becomes out of date, and whenever you want to use some special equipment, you want the latest and the greatest, don't you? So what do? You don't buy it, you rent it. You go to a company that have lots of industrial equipment or DIY kit, like a big power drill or a thing for mashing up a pavement, and you hire it. And it costs very little, even ladders. You can even hire ladders. But it works really well because when you're not using it, you just give it back. Or you can hire it for a little bit longer and you've got it there when you need it, and when you don't, you give it back. You don't have any long-term maintenance expenses or anything like that. And someone else is responsible for making sure that it's in good working order and, does what it's supposed to do. Why could that not work for the drone industry? I think about it in my drone box down there and on the shelf back there. I've got the Mavic 2, I've got the Mavic Air 2, I've got the Mavic Mini and the Mavic 2, Mavic Mini 2. I've got 4 drones. I've also got the Parrot Anafi. I've also got other various GPS drones. And how often do I really use them all? Well, the honest answer is very rarely, because I'm generally flying one for a long time, then I get bored of flying that one and I go to another one. And in between those times, the other drones are just sat on the shelf depreciating in value. The firmware's becoming out of date. The batteries are sat there in storage mode, probably depreciating as well, because batteries like to be used. They don't like to be just sat at a charge level for any period of time, especially not for years. So it occurred to me that, what about a rental model for drones? Would that not be a great idea? Now let's think about the advantages to this. Drones are released so often in the market, and you always want the latest and the greatest, don't you? As soon as DJI release the Mini 2 or the Mavic Air 3 or the Mavic 3, you're going to jump and buy it. And when you do, you might want to sell your old drones. Now the secondhand market is quite good actually for drones. I've tended to get not far off what I paid for my drones actually when I sell them secondhand, but that's not always the case, and it does largely depend on where you live. Because if you live in an area where drones are very accessible, where the secondhand market is very buoyant, you're not going to get a lot of money back for those used drones. The other side of it is we always have to maintain our drones. We have to keep the firmware updated, we have to keep the apps updated, and we have to charge our batteries up. And if a drone's been sat on the shelf for a while, it's not going to meet any of those elements. So you have to basically start from scratch before you fly it to make sure that the thing is up to date. And then also, of course, there is the fact that we just don't want a ton of drones in, sat around doing nothing. So imagine now if you could go and rent a drone. Imagine if you could choose any drone you want, the latest brand new drone that you don't have to spend $1,000 or $1,500 to buy and use maybe once or twice a month, especially in winter when it's really cold. You could order it online. It gets shipped to you within a day in some countries. In fact, Amazon are even doing same-day delivery. Imagine Amazon Prime with a drone rental service where you could go and get a Mavic 2 Pro. It's there like that. An hour after you've ordered it, you use it, you hold on to it for a week maybe, or 2 weeks, however long you want. I don't know, you pay $50 perhaps, something like that. And then they come and pick it up and take it back. You don't need to worry about maintaining it. You don't need to worry about whether the props are all in good working order, the firmware, the battery life, etc. You don't need to care because you rent it. Now you might think, well, why would I want to pay $50 each time to use my drone? Well, if you think about a drone that you buy and it costs you, like my Mavic 2 Pro was what, $1,500? Now, if I use that drone twice a month, let's say that that would cost me $100 if I was renting it. That's twice a month. Multiply that by a year. So you're looking at $1,100. So in a year, you could either buy it or rent it. Let's say if it was $50 a time to keep it for a week. Now, DJI generally release a new drone every year. And so after that year has passed and you've spent your $1,500 on buying the drone, you're going to be buying the next drone and flying that one instead. But in the meantime, you've had to maintain your drone if you own it. You've had to pay for new props. You've had to spend a lot of time updating the firmware and all of that. If you rent it, you use it and you send it back. I just think that could be really, really good. The other thing is, because they're renting them out, you know that they'll have been well maintained. You know that they'll have been inspected, because ultimately the rental company want them back. So they're not going to send out a drone that's got a problem. Now, there is a few challenges to this, of course. The first thing is, if you crash the rental drone, how are you going to work out who's responsible? If you blame the drone arriving in a condition that wasn't flyable, then that's all good, but are you going to have to take photos or video of the drone before you fly it to show the condition it was in? Also, if the last person that rented it crashed it, but there's no visible damage, but actually they might have knackered the gimbal on it, the very sensitive gimbal, but only broken it in a way that it only breaks in a certain angle. For example, my Mavic Mini gimbal needed to be replaced, and the gimbal worked perfectly until you pointed it 90 degrees down, and then it got stuck. But you might not actually know that there's a problem with the gimbal until you point it 90 degrees down. Now, if you're the recipient of that rental drone and you are unfortunate enough that the rental company think that you broke the gimbal, are you going to be liable for it? The other thing, of course, is that the shipping time. When you want a drone, you want it now. And Amazon, the example there of the same-day delivery would work great. But not all countries and not all areas have same-day delivery yet. In fact, Sweden is incredibly frustrating because nothing gets here next day. It's normally next week. And it's really frustrating because in the UK, everything's next day, if not same day. So that's the other challenge we'd have. It's nice to just be able to grab a drone and take it out and fly it when you want to fly it. However, that doesn't mean you can't have a drone that you do keep yourself. You buy one drone for yourself that you can fly when you want, like the Mavic Mini 2. And when you really want to do something special, you rent a Mavic 2 Pro or a Phantom 4, Ken Heron, or an Inspire. Wouldn't that be great? I've always wanted an Inspire, but I've never wanted to pay $3,000 or $4,000 for one. But if I could rent one for a week for $100, I probably would, because after that, I'd know whether or not I wanted to buy one. Something to think about, folks. What do you think? Would you rent a drone? And if so, what would you think would be reasonable to pay for a week of renting a Mavic 2 Pro? Comment below with your thoughts. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, give the video a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you just want to. Thanks for watching, guys.